Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Ken Dolan-Del Vecchio, and I'm here with my friend and co-author, Nancy Saxton-Lopez. This is a program that we do live every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is an opportunity to take the learning that we gained over facilitating pet loss support groups for decades. Nancy's 30 plus years and my, I guess, 12 or 13 years now and counting. We took all that we gained from the experience of many, many people sharing with us what they were going through and our clinical knowledge and put together a book called The Pet Loss Companion, Healing Advice from Family Therapists Who Lead Pet Loss Groups. And when we became familiar with this technology, we thought it would be great if we could do an even broader reach. And so that's why we do this program. And it is an opportunity for us to converse with you. And so we invite you to send us your stories, your questions, your suggestions for topics or guests. And this way we can have a sort of a dialogue. It's not a direct dialogue, but you can send some comments to us while we're broadcasting as well. And so we appreciate any way that you might get in touch with us. This program is a friend of Dakin Humane Society, which is in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's a great friend of the program. It also is the sponsor for a Zoom pet loss support group that I facilitate once a month. It is generally on the second Tuesday of every month. And so it's coming up December 13th from 6 p.m. to 7:30. There's a link in the description that would allow you to RSVP. It is a cost-free program, and you can join us from anywhere in the world. And we've had people join us from all across the US and really from all across the world. It's very interesting to have that mix of people. You can reach me at kenddv@gmail.com. Again, that's kenddv@gmail.com. You can reach Nancy at nsaxtonlopez at csmpc.com. That's nsaxtonlopez at csmpc.com. And as I said before, you can send us your stories, your suggestions for topics and guests. And you can also let us know if you do send a personal story, whether it would be okay for us to share it on the program. And we're perfectly fine with either sharing it or not sharing it, because we understand that sometimes it would be better to just get a confidential response. We try to respond to every email with an email back to you in any case. And also, we'd like you to know that you can support us in doing this work through a contribution through Venmo or through PayPal. You can also do a monthly subscription. How you do that is described in the description. And we want to thank actually Kara, who gave us a very generous gift of support. So we just want to mention that we are very appreciative of that. We also want to mention that we're not asking you to necessarily give us support. We do this as a labor of love, as something to give to the community, but we certainly appreciate it when people give us some measure of support. So, Nancy, do you want to get us started from
Yes. There's quite a few housekeeping things that we need to take care of. I think you have the pictures of Jack's Diesel.
Yes. Yeah. This
So we
is
have
Jack
wonderful pictures
Diesel
of
from last week.
Diesel.
And here is Diesel.
Okay.
He's a very beautiful little dog.
Oh,
And
he's
here's
like,
another picture of Diesel.
oh, he's so cute.
So this was Diesel when he was feeling well, and we're so sorry about the loss and grateful to Jack for sharing his story with us.
Now, also next week, obviously in the United States anyway, it is Thanksgiving. We wish everyone here a nice Thanksgiving. So we will not be live. And the week after, we have a recording. Now, it's going to be an interesting topic because there is a gentleman that we found. His name is Alan Hillsberg, I believe. And he does aquamation, which is a different way to do cremation. So instead of using fire, it uses water. And so it's better for the environment. But it's a very interesting program, and it will be recorded, but it will be in the week after Thanksgiving.
Very, very interesting. In fact, I was thinking that it might be the way that I'd like for my body to
Mhm.
be disposed of because it sounds so environmentally friendly. So we learned a lot from him.
Yes,
Yeah.
very interesting gentleman. Um, Also, we have had quite a few, heartbreaking, heartwarming emails come in, and so we're in the process. We've gotten back to everyone. We're in the process of kind of thinking of when we can share those stories. We do have a very important story tonight because of the intensity around what happened to its cat and her cat Spencer. And it stuck out with us, and I think you'll understand that once we tell you Spencer's story. Um, so I'm going to read it, and then we'll discuss. So Kat sent us this. It came in very recently. I am so grateful to have found your podcast and ordered your book. It is so relatable and non judgmental. I am 69 and have had two beautiful cats, Spencer and Jack, brothers who I got when they were kittens 8 years ago. I had had cats before, and their deaths were so hard. I moved my cats out of their only home they knew in the San Francisco Bay Area down to a completely different environment in Palm Desert a year ago. My cats have always been able to go in and out. I cannot imagine making a cat stay inside. My cats always had a yard. Anyway, so I finally let them go outside in the desert here where I live along the side of a golf course. I was warned about coyotes, which were also present in the Bay Area. I always made sure they came inside before dark, and I had never seen a coyote when it was still light. I let outside my beautiful big gray kitty cat Spencer yesterday when I got home to give him a few minutes outside before the dark came. After about 10 minutes, I heard a horrible sort of screeching noise and I ran outside. I saw a coyote with something big in his mouth. I thought it was a large bird. They were at the bottom of the green slope, which goes along the fairway sides of the golf course, at least 20 feet away. It just did not look like a cat. I screamed at that coyote, threw a couple rocks, which didn't get close. My neighbor walked outside, and the coyote left the animal, and my neighbor went down to look, and he said he thought it was my cat, Spencer. Then the coyote came back, picked up my cat, and started trotting to the other side of the golf course. I chased him, screaming at the top of my lungs, and he dropped my Spencer, who was not moving, of course, and now it's dark. Long story short, someone came to help and identified that it was Spencer. I could never look at him. I really need help. I'm inconsolable. It was all my fault. I should have never let him go outside again right before dark. I never should have let him out at all since I knew coyotes were out there, and I should have run down that slope to help save him when I first saw the coyote had him. I should have thought it could be Spencer. I did not keep him safe. I failed to help him, and the way he died must have been extraordinarily painful. I think these things over and over as I long for him and miss him to death. All I do is sob and cry and bury my head every place he lay down and think he would be there if I had kept him safe. Please, please help me get through this immense guilt. I cut his life short. His brother Jack just wanders around the house looking for him. This hole was about 30 hours long. 30 hours ago. Everything gone in a split second. Thank you so much. You can share my story. I love the special, beautiful Spencer so much. I hope he knows that.
So when we heard this story, we reacted to it so strongly. We felt
Visceral.
like, yeah, we felt viscerally. Yeah, we felt like we have to respond to this because it captures so well the experience of extraordinary guilt that is so common. And one of the things that I immediately thought of is we we structure our animal companions' lives, every detail of their
Every
lives
detail.
we are structuring whether when they're out, when they're in, what they eat, what care they get. And so it makes sense that when we care so much about them and we are responsible for setting up all of the parameters within which they live, that when something goes wrong, we are immediately feeling
Feel it.
extraordinarily
Feel.
guilty. And so we wanted to talk about this case because we think it is so central to the experience of losing a pet. And the other first thoughts I had were, I wonder how many times Kat let Spencer out at dusk and there was no problem.
Yeah. It
She went
didn't, nothing
yada, she came
happened,
back
right?
in. She let Spencer and Jack out, and they came back in. There was no coyote in the vicinity, and nothing to be concerned about. And then this time, the unthinkable happens.
Yeah.
But in general, and again, we think about things like we have such limited control. We think we have control over all of the possible variables, but we don't.
No.
We don't. I mean, how many times have we heard of people who let their dog out to play and a hawk comes
Yeah.
and picks them up? And we each have stories
Yes.
that we can contribute that will resonate with what Kat is experiencing. And one I'll tell you right now. So I adopted a cat, a barn cat, who I named Diana. And I just fell in love with this little cat. And she would follow me all over the place. I would go for a hike and she would come with me, and she would go up trees and then she'd come down the tree. And I have a property that's a good part of it is wooded. And she would live in my office, in the office I'm in right now. And here she would stay at night. And at night I would lock her in because there was no fence. Now there is a fence. It's sort of a legacy that
For Diana.
I put up after her for after I lost her. But okay, so Diana would come in at night. I would lock her in here. I'd close the cat door, and then I adopted another barn cat who I named Artemis. And Artemis was close to feral. And one night, Artemis did not come in at night. And I was worried about it. And I was like, and I thought about it and I said, okay, I'll leave the cat door open because Diana is asleep in here already. And I figured, okay, so eventually Artemis will come in. So I left it open. And that night, Diana got killed, probably on the road, but possibly by an animal. It was a little hard to tell. I found her at some distance from the road, and it was a little hard to tell if she had actually been hurt on the road or some animal had grabbed her. But I was inconsolable. I was absolutely out of control. I was screaming. I was crying. I love this cat so much. I called up my husband. I was crying to him. He came home. I dug a hole. I was distraught. And I kept thinking, how foolish was I why didn't I just lock Artemis out? And by the way, Artemis basically came back and forth a little bit more, but disappeared. I mean, it took off, was really feral. And so it was just really incredibly painful for me because I felt like that decision is what caused her to die.
That's right.
And now when I look back on it, I think, well, yes, but what can I do about it? And also, how many times has she been out late and nothing had happened? And I'm sure there were other times when I didn't lock her in or I didn't lock her in until after nightfall. And in fact, I thought back, and there were times when I had a pet sitter here and she didn't come back at all at night and came back the next day. But to me, it was like my fault.
Of course.
And arguably, you could say that, but such is life. These things happen.
Look, there are sometimes just accidents.
Yeah.
And accidents happen. And we don't, like you said, we really don't have a lot of control over that. I mean, there are quite a few that came up in the group. I mean, a young woman with her child got in the car and she backed up over her dog.
Yep.
A man who took his elderly lab to work, and he had a routine with the lab about where he put his briefcase. And unfortunately, one day he thought the dog wasn't with him, and he was, and the dog died of heat stroke in the car.
Yeah.
I
We've
mean,
heard those stories a few times. Yeah. Yeah.
these things that are just horrific accidents. And of
Yeah.
course, they would feel guilty. I mean, I have a story of my own. I had shared this with Kat. My first pug as an adult was Tashi. And, Tashi, I don't remember how old she was. She was probably about 11. And I made chicken soup one night. And so I put a lot of the fat, in the garbage, right? She had never gotten in the garbage. Um, and I went to pick up my husband at the train station. And when I got back, I mean, everything was fine. I didn't really look at the garbage. But the next day, she got really sick. She was vomiting and she had diarrhea. And we took her to the local vet, and he said to us she has pancreatitis, which can be very dangerous. It can kill an animal. And, I was beside myself. I knew that the fat could create that, but she's not going to eat the garbage. She never does, right? I didn't think, and I never really thought of that. Well, she got worse. We had to take her up here. We lived in Essex County at the time in New Jersey, and we had to bring her up here to where I live now in Bergen, and she died. And the other thing was I couldn't be with her because she was 45 minutes away, right?
But she had eaten the fat, right?
She had eaten the fat.
They'd gotten into it.
Created the pancreatitis. Her body could not filter that fat, and she died. And again, I felt the same way Kat does. I felt the same way you did. It's horrible, and you think, you do everything you can for your animals, and then something like this happens.
Yep.
And it's so hard to forgive yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because you think I did this. I didn't take the garbage out. I needed to do that.
Yep.
Or you needed to close the door,
Yeah.
right? Or Kat needed to run down or not have left him out or run down to get him initially. And it's just, the guilt is over. That's one of the hardest.
I mean, I feel like I have a whole bunch of these stories. I've mentioned that my dog Jack died while we were in Spain. We were in Barcelona. Well, what happened was Jack had congestive heart failure. We had gone to the vet before the trip, and he was stable. He was on a bunch of meds. We had a pet sitter who we hadn't used before, but we had vetted her and whatnot. And I remember saying to her explicitly, we have to have water available all the time because he drinks a lot. He drinks a lot. He needs to drink a lot. Anyway, he died while we were in Barcelona, and I came home, and there was no water in the water bowl for the other two dogs, which led me to believe that was an issue, that she had not been giving them enough water. There was no water. We had 3 dogs at the time. We came home. We came in from our trip. The water bowl was dry. And so immediately I thought, okay, well, I trusted a pet sitter who I've never should have trusted. She didn't follow a very, very basic. I mean, how do you leave dogs without water? First of all, any dogs without water, but a dog who you have been explicitly told must drink more than usual. And so, there was no water for the dogs. And
that must have been really, really difficult for you.
Really, really, it was incredibly sad and really, distressing in so many ways. And are we going to sue the person? No, it's done. It's over with.
And I think it goes back to what you said in the beginning of the podcast, is we make decisions for our animals all the time. And most of the time, many times, lots of times, most of almost all the time, those decisions are okay.
Yeah.
But sometimes they just aren't, and we don't know
Yep.
when that's going to be, and accidents do happen. And the guilt is astronomical. And so, I'm sure you and I both got back to Kat and said, look, you were a really good pet parent.
Yeah.
You were the best. But sometimes these things just happen. We don't have a rhyme or reason to them. Why we may, have, after the 100th time of letting Spencer out, the 100th, and one time something happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the guilt is really a difficult emotion. It's probably the worst emotion to deal with in grieving. And so we just hope we really appreciate Kat reaching out to us, because it's a hard thing to talk about.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and we do get guilt all the time. People say, I should have taken them to the vet sooner. I should have given them the medication that they needed. I should have not have left when I left. But this it's such a tragic thing, to know or to believe that because you let Spencer out, Cat let Spencer out that one time. I knew that there were coyotes around, and that's what happened. And it takes a lot of courage to talk about those things.
Yeah. And I also want to just comment that opinions vary about cats and letting cats outside and not letting them outside. And I just want to acknowledge that some
Mhm.
people will say, well, you should never let a cat outside. And others like Cat and like me would say, well, cats love to be outside.
Yeah,
And we do the best we can to provide an environment that is going to offer them safety.
right.
And so I think it's just important to note that there are differing opinions, and we're not coming down on either one of those. It's like I believe that you need to make the decision that suits your household, that
Exactly.
suits your philosophy, and that if you try to say that one is entirely right and one is entirely wrong, you go into a place that I can't really support. I feel
Right.
like
There's no all right or all wrong, right? I
right.
mean, it's the way life is,
Yeah.
But things like, there was a gentleman at the group that, gave his dog pizza crust, here and there.
Yeah.
And then one day he did, and the dog choked on it and died. I
Yeah.
mean, these things unfortunately happen.
Yeah.
And we beat ourselves up, of course. We feel guilty because we're there to protect them and take care of them.
Well, we had a person write into us. Their little terrier died because I can't remember if it was a he or a she, but they ate a piece of a dead bird
Oh,
and
correct. Right.
it got
That
stuck
was
in
during
their
our
in
podcast.
their
Right.
in their
That's right.
esophagus, and
Right.
when I heard that story, I'm like, oh my God, how many voles have my dogs eaten at
Yeah.
various stages of decomposition because I just couldn't get it away from them
Right.
fast enough. And it was just really scary to hear that. And then but for the most times when animals eat these horrible things, what happens? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing happens. They
No.
just, somehow my dogs are outside, they're in a very fairly contained run when I let them loose in our yard. But I don't know, I guess they find like vole poop or
Mhm.
toad poop, but they find things in the dirt that they think are just delicious.
Delicious.
And all I can think is, thank God they're getting wormed they get their Simparica trio every month. But it's like you have to just say to yourself, like, what can you do? Like, this is what dogs do. And yet there'll be that one time
That's
in
something will
some
cause
people's experience
a problem.
where something terrible happens. And it's just there's so much about fate
Right.
that is
And
well
no control.
outside of our grasp. It's just outside of our grasp. And
We don't have power and we don't have control.
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure I lost one of my cats, Henry, to a
Oh, Henry. I
coyote
was
as
going to
well.
ask you about or tell you about
You know,
Henry.
he figured out how to get out of our fence. It's 6 feet tall. It's a solid picket fence. It has a 2-foot extension that comes in at a 45-degree angle, and he put all his energy into figuring out how to get out. Then I hung some some netting fabric down from the top, and he figured out how to scale that too. And at that point, I said, I can do no more. And Henry was with me for a few years,
Mhm.
but one day he just disappeared.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure,
He's never come back, I
yeah,
know.
I'm pretty sure a coyote got him. And I had to have a conversation with myself where I said, and I adopted him as a barn cat. He with the explicit instructions that he could not be kept just inside because it would not be okay for him
Mm.
psychologically given his background. And so I had to accept that that's what happens sometimes, you know.
I think we wanna also end with, you know, it's 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 an emotionally difficult, challenging time, but we need to continue to still take care of ourselves.
We just have to keep going. We might have to think about it over and over and over again. And Kat wrote back and said that she went to the place where Spencer's body was found and sort of did a ritual.
Good.
She lay close to the ground and tried to feel connected to him and let him know how much he loved him. And we have to do things like that. However the spirit moves us to do the
To
things that
do
help
the
us feel like
rituals or
we
memorials.
are
Yes.
enacting our feelings,
Mhm.
connecting, and we just do the best we can to keep moving forward, to take care of ourselves, take care of our basic needs. If we feel any inclination to do so, we should get in touch with a therapist. It can't
Yes.
hurt.
Yes.
We can do things like come to the Zoom group
Mhm.
that Dakin offers that I facilitate. We can find other such programs online. There are databases where you can post remembrances. All of these things we want to do
So,
that will help ourselves and
no
figure out
matter
what
how
feels
many
best.
no matter how many rituals,
Mhm.
no matter how many memorials, it's fine, you know. The guilt, hopefully, for any of us and all of us, Cat included, will dissipate over a period of time.
Yeah.
You know, because we all know, you and I, I'm sure, told Cat, Spencer's already right here, right
Mhm.
in her heart, and he's not going anywhere, right?
Mhm.
He's there. He's not here, you know, physically, but he's with her. And
Yeah.
like all of our animals, your Diana, you know, is with you. My Tashi's still with me.
Yeah.
And so it's painful and we grieve, but you know, hopefully the guilt will dissipate over a period of
Oh,
time.
it definitely will. It will get less and less, but it has its own time, right? And it ebbs and flows
Yeah.
as every part of grief does.
Yeah.
And we just keep going. We do the best we can.
So we appreciate, Kat, your email, and I'm glad that we have been able to share this story because I think that there are many others out there who may have had some similar experiences.
Yep.
And so I think that that's going to be really helpful, and we have had them too. So, but we wish everyone a wonderful holiday,
Yep.
you know, here in the United States
Absolutely. Yep. Have
and
a good
around the
Thanksgiving.
world. I hope everyone's well, and we'll talk to you live in a few weeks.